Good evening, students. Let's continue with our same topic, that's useful and harmful microbes. Last time when we met, we learned about yeast, we completed rhizobium, and we also understood about wine preparation. We understood two basic preparations, that is, first is bread making and second one is wine making. Correct? Post which we started with ethanol, and today we are going to learn more about ethanol. So tell me, what is ethanol? It is a type of alcohol also called as ethyl alcohol. And when we use yeast, which consumes sugar, or to be very specific, sugar from organic material, we get ethanol as a byproduct. Is there any other use of ethanol, or do we use ethanol in any other processes other than only bread or wine? Let's have a look at it. Ethanol is a smokeless and high quality fuel. What does it do? Besides molasses, now what is molasses? Here is the meaning. Molasses is a thick, dark syrup made up of sugar. When we make sugar, there's a process called as sugar making process, in which the remains of the sugar cane are beaten up. Okay, and after the beating up of the sugar cane, the remains are used and they are being kept on very low flame. What happens is it gets more saturated and becomes dark and thick syrup. This thick syrup looks very similar like a date syrup, which is nothing but molasses. So remember, molasses is a thick sugary substance which is very high in its sugar content. So besides molasses, maize, barley, other grains are also used for industrial production of ethanol. Now, when ethanol is to be produced on a very large quantities, we cannot just add flour and add yeast and wait for the fermentation. So what do? We take any available source of carbon, which is very high in its sugar content, and to it, we add yeast. Yeast is nothing but our Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And after adding of yeast, what happens? Fermentation reaction takes place. And once the fermentation is completed, what do we get in return? We get CO2 and we get ethanol. Right? Okay. I've revised this slide because I know we are going to continue with ethanol. So there has to be something as a revision. Now there is a question in your textbook. The question mentions recently it has been made compulsory in India and some other countries to mix 10% of ethanol with fuels like petrol and diesel. What is the reason for this? Now, do you know that ethanol is diluted with the fuel which you use in your vehicles, even with gasoline? In foreign countries, even gasoline is very much used as a fuel into automobiles. Yes. Now, why do we have to blend or mix this petrol or diesel with ethanol? That too, government has given the guidelines that it should be 10%. If we mix or if we blend this 10% of ethanol, is it reducing the quality of petrol which we use? Or it is adding up or enhancing the quality of the fuel which you use in the vehicles? Or what could be the reason, or how is ethanol helping us if we blend it with our fuel? Let's have a look at it. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have observed this, but usually when you go refilling the fuel for your vehicle, you'll be able to see such kind of screen. Okay, that the fuel contains up to 10% of ethanol. Now, why is this fuel blended with 10% of ethanol? Number one, ethanol is molecule. You know that each and every element or atom, it is made up of atoms and molecules, right? So ethanol molecule contains oxygen in it. And we all know that oxygen is very important for combustion. So whenever we blend ethanol with any other fuel, it helps in complete combustion of the fuel. Correct? That's the second point. It allows the engine to more completely combust the fuel. And what will be the resultant? If the complete fuel is combust, okay, if the complete fuel is nicely combust, do we have more pollution? Or can I say we are using the fuel completely? Yes, we are making the best of the fuel. Therefore, very fewer emissions will be released and less environmental pollution will be caused. Okay. Now, this is your answer. This can be asked even for your give reason. So do not forget to, by heart this question and answer. It can be asked in both the way. It could be either asked as answer the following question or even as give reasons. That why recently petrol and diesel are mixed with 10% of ethanol. So please remember this points. No, you do not have to write this. You just have to remember it. You will have answer of this question whenever you will get your notes. And 10% is the fixed limit. Why? Because the 10% is been decided after a lot of research and trials are done. You do not have to write it now. Okay, let's move on to the second question. Okay, if in case you have any doubt, you're mentioning it on the chat box. Please mention on the chat box from where you're able to listen to me, from where the audio is on. Okay, let's understand the second question. Now, the second question is, why are wineries located near Nashik in Maharashtra? That means, why are wineries only situated in Nashik region of Maharashtra? Can anybody guess the question? Why grapes are not cultivated in other parts of the state? Why are they not cultivated in Mumbai, not in Satara, not in Sangli? What could be the reason? Yes, you guessed it correctly. Climate and the weather. So for grapes, or I can say for wine, grapes are the most essential thing. And if you want a good quality of wine, the grapes have to be of good and premium quality. Now, how will we decide whether the grapes are of good quality or not? Now, let me tell you, grapes for their best kind of growth requires extreme high and extreme cold temperatures. So at Nashik, whenever you'll see the temperatures or the days are very much warmer and the nights are very chiller. This combination of extreme hot and extreme cold helps to make the grapes more acid inside them. Yes, you heard me correctly. Grapes have acid inside them. And the name of the acid present inside grape is called as tartaric acid. So adequate sun, heat and water during the growing season helps to enhance its flavor and its health. The climate of Nashik is warm, averagely 26 degrees Celsius in the daytime. And at the night time, the nights are cold, having temperature about 7 to 8 degrees Celsius. Now, this combination of warmer days and chiller nights, can you see how big is the difference? Where we have 26 degrees Celsius and at the night time we have 7 to 8 degrees Celsius. So the difference between these two different temperatures is more than 15 degrees Celsius. And grapes in such an environment can produce fruitful or premium qualities of grapes can be grown. Therefore, these conditions are ideal for the growth of grapes and gives very good flavor. And the name of the acid, if you need to know, the name of the acid is tartaric acid. Yes, therefore, if the grapes do not get sufficient amount of temperatures or climate, what will happen? Either the grapes will be very sour or they might be sweet. So perfect balance between both these temperatures helps in very good quality of grapes growth. Okay, now there are a lot many students who are requesting for the previous slide. I am taking you back to the previous slide so that you can jot down the 4 points if you want, and let me come back to the same slide. Here you go with the points. Giving you half a minute or so that you can write them down. You did not write the question. The question is given in your textbook. Yes, now there are a lot of students asking the same questions. Grapes taste sour because of the presence of acid in them. So most of the fruits which will give you sour taste, please understand they will have some amount of acid inside them. Let's say lemon, oranges, all these fruits come from or give us citric acid within them. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, and these are your points. For the second question, that why are wineries located in Nashik region of Maharashtra only? So you will wonder that grapes also taste sweet, then are those grapes not containing any amount of acid within them? So the answer will be that all the grapes contain acid within them. Only what type of climate or temperature they are exposed to will decide whether the grapes are going to be sour or sweet. Same even goes for wine. If you let the wine to ferment for a long duration, adding yeast into it, the most aged wine will be extremely sour in its taste. Whereas if you add yeast to the grape juice, if you just let it ferment for about 1 to 2 months and you stop the reaction, what will happen? You will get a sweeter wine. This is another category of wine. Yeah, they will have acid within them, but in very less proportion. Why in less proportion? Because maximum amount of sugar will be present in these grapes. Okay, let's move on to the third and the last question. The question is, chapatis made from wheat only swell up, but bread becomes spongy, soft, and is easy to digest. Why is it so? Now, what do you think will be the answer for this question? Tell me, between chapati and bread, which is the fermented product? Between chapati and bread, which is the fermented product? Obviously, bread. And if it is fermented, that we add yeast to it. Therefore, the answer for the question that is the dough of chapati fermented product or not, the answer is going to be no. So if the answer is no, tell me, will there be fermentation and expulsion of CO2 from dough of chapati? No, correct? Yes. Now tell me, if there is no expulsion of CO2, will a chapati rise and become spongy and soft? Correct. You have answered the correct question. So here is the answer in front of you. Chapatis are not fermented, whereas bread is a fermented product. Bread is spongy and soft as after fermentation, expulsion of CO2 takes place, which is absent in case of chapati's dough. These are your 2 points, and your third point will be that any fermented product is high in its nutritive value. I've mentioned earlier as well. Let's say you're eating bread or idlis. You can max to max eat 3 to 4 idlis at a time, the bigger ones I'm talking. In case of chapatis, you can add more on its number. You can eat 3, 4, 5, 6, a number of chapatis. Now, why is the difference? Because idli is a fermented product which is very high in its nutritive value, whereas chapati is a non-fermented product. It will have its nutritive value, but certainly less than a fermented product. Chapatis will rise on heating. Now, why does that happen? Because when you knead the dough, there's a lot of air which you trap in. And even when you start, rolling it, there's a specific shape which you get, a triangular shape, which gives layer to the dough. And these layer on heating expanded. Why? Because air gets trapped into it. Therefore, they will rise for a while till the time it's there on the hot pan. And the moment you remove it from the hot pan, it will again come to its normal pace. All the air entrapped will just get loosened out from a point, and a hole will be created on the upper surface. The third point will be that fermented products are high in its nutritive value. And since it is high in its nutritive value, fermented products are always easy to digest. That's your answer. Now there's one more question asked. Do vegetables have more nutritive value? It depends upon whether your vegetable is an organic or grown with the help of fertilizers. Secondly, different vegetables give different calories or nutrients with them. And based on category of vegetable, they can be high in its fiber or nutritive value or protein content. It differs from one to other vegetables. All right, we are completed with the 3 questions. Now let's go on to the big and new topic, that's antibiotic. Now before going or starting with the topic of antibiotic, I want you to narrate a story. I hope you all are ready for it. Okay? Moving on to the story, the person which you are able to see on your screen is Dr. Alexander Fleming. Dr. Alexander Fleming was once working in his laboratory. And what happened is he wanted to culture is to cultivate or to grow a certain type of bacteria. Name of this bacteria was Staphylococcus. Since they are more in number, let us call it as Staphylococci. So what happens? Dr. Fleming sits in the laboratory. He takes a petri dish, a glass dish, which is very similar to that of a saucer, but it will also have a lid on itself so that there is no contamination occurring. And in that petri dish, when he pours the nutrient, he will add very few drop of bacteria. And after adding few drop of bacteria, he knows that after some time, this bacteria in that one drop will start taking up or absorbing nutrients which are present in the petri dish, and they will start growing in the number. This is what we call as bacterial culture. Okay, and what happens, he just leaves those petri dish on the table and he goes. He's like, I will come after some time and then I will view the petri dish. Now there are 3 petri dishes. Let us name them as A, B and C. What he observes is in petri dish A and B, Staphylococci bacterial cultures have grown nicely. But there's something gutbud with plate number C. So let's have a look at what happened in plate C. Okay? Now let me give you a background. Dr. Alexander Fleming was professor of microbiology at St. Mary's Hospital. He was working on cultures of bacteria and fungi in a petri dishes in his laboratory. He was growing a bacterial cultures and the name of the bacteria was Staphylococci. Please remember it's the plural form of the same bacteria which we have studied earlier, Staphylococcus. What is petri dish? Okay, petri dish is a small dish-like structure made up of glass. It is very similar to that of saucer, but it will also have a lid on it, a covering lid on it. That lid will be also made up of glass. These small dishes are used so that bacterial cultures can be grown. Okay. And there in the next slide, you also have diagrams so that you'll be able to see how does a petri dish look like. Wait for a while. Now what happens is, excuse me, what happens is after some times when he comes back to look at the petri dish, he finds out that on plate number C, there's a different microbe which is growing. And this different microbe is the penicillium fungus which was growing instead of the bacterial culture. And what he thought that I have added a drop of bacteria. So technically speaking, the bacterial culture must should be growing in the plate number C, but instead of bacterial culture, it was the penicillium fungus which was growing. So what happened or what went wrong? He went on investigating the case. And what he found was that one microbe, because fungus and bacteria, both of them are microbes, right? What he found out was one microbe is killing the other microbe. That's the very, very important thought. Correct? He found that one microbe can be used in killing other microbe. That's something fantastic. So what did he do next? Okay, these are the pictures of petri dish cultures in which Staphylococcus bacteria have grown. I hope you all can see it. Okay, these are nothing but Staphylococci bacterial cultures. These are plate number A and B. Now let's have a look at plate number C. Completely different. So he took a scope and he observed them under microscope. What he found was that this is no bacteria. Instead, it is a penicillium fungus which is growing in place of my Staphylococci bacteria. He also found few traces of bacteria within plate C as well. And what he understood was that my bacteria had grown inside the petri dish, but the fungus released some secretions. Okay? The fungus released some secretions because of which my bacteria started dying. Now let's understand this one by one. In front of you, you will be able to see two diagrams. One belongs to the fungus called as penicillium, and the second one is Staphylococci bacteria. Now, as you can see, the fungus structures is slightly different. It has a stalk-like body. There are spores at the top. So what is going to happen? From the spores, few of the spores are going to fall off. The green ones, are you able to see the spores? Correct. And these spores are then going to go near the bacterial culture. This is all what is happening inside the petri dish. And slowly and eventually, the population of this fungus is going to increase. See? And as the population of fungus is increasing, the population of bacteria culture is decreasing. Why? Because these fungus are releasing few secretions, because of which the bacteria is getting killed. Right? And at certain point, you will be only able to see that there is no more bacteria in the dish. It is completely filled with fungus. Therefore, we can say that Penicillium fungus started killing our bacteria. That's the conclusion which Dr. Fleming made. Now, after observing all these things, he understood one prime principle behind it. What happened was one microbe killed other microbe. Okay, that's a big thing. So can I make use of it? If one microbe can kill other microbe, can this idea be used in medicines? What do you think, students? Can this idea be used in medicine? And why do you want to use this in medicines? Why not into some other firm? Let's understand there are many diseases, or we get infected with various diseases due to harmful bacteria. It could be the bacteria sitting on the junk food which we eat, or it could be any object which we are touching might have harmful germs, pathogens, harmful bacteria, because of which we suffer. Correct? So if we suffer from various harmful bacterial diseases, can't we use this principle in killing those harmful bacteria inside our body? Right? So that's your next question. Can we use fungus to kill harmful diseases using, causing bacteria inside our body? Yes, correct. There you go. So what happened is discovery of antibiotic took place. So what is antibiotic? It's nothing but such medicines which are used to kill harmful bacteria in our body, and these medicines are called as antibiotics. So let me read it out for you. Such medicines which are used to kill harmful bacteria in the body are called as antibiotics. Anti means something working against somebody. And biotics, you can obviously understand, it is against a living being. Now, even a fungus is a living being. Correct? Even a fungus is a living being. And even bacteria is a living being. Therefore, these medicines are named as antibiotics. Now, let's understand types of antibiotics. Okay? Now, have you ever thought that maybe if a small baby is crying, if a very small baby is crying, the baby won't be able to tell what exactly is the child suffering from. It could be stomachache, and even in the abdominal or stomachache, we have various regions, right? It could be pain or swelling in the liver. It could be improper digestion. It could be pain in the lower abdomen where intestines are situated, right? There could be various reasons for it. So when we don't know that which exact pathogen is causing what harm, but we know the area, what we can do is we can use a medicine which can treat more than one type of disorder. Okay? Now let's say in front of you, you have a scale. Each one color is resembling a type of disorder. Let there be abdomen pain, let there be discomfort, let there be acidity. Now these three things can occur if you've eaten something wrong, if you're suffering from any internal infection, if your food is not properly digested. There can be various reasons behind it. Now, can I use one type of antibiotic which can relieve all three types of these symptoms? Yes, when I'm using, yeah, there exists some. When now I'll give you example how this happens. Let's say you are not feeling well and you get fever. You go to your family physician, the doctor to whom you visit every time, and may whatever happen to you, the doctor will have a shelf on which fixed set of medicines are kept, yellow, white, pink, blue color, and he will give you combination of medicines within the same medicines which he has, and still you feel very fine after taking them. Why? Because most of the time these are such medicine that can heal more than one type of disorder. Such type of antibiotics are called as broad spectrum antibiotics. ये ऐसे एंटीबायोटिक्स है जो एक टाइम पे एक से ज्यादा टाइप के डिसऑर्डर्स को फिक्स कर सकते हैं. Okay, now these will be only given when the pathogen or the exact bacteria is not known, and they can still give a good relief to your body. Yes, I know there are many doubts upcoming. I'll solve them one by one. Now let's say you are going to a doctor. The doctor gave you such set of medicines, and later on, if you're not feeling well, even after taking those medicines, what will happen? The doctor will ask you to repeat one more dose, and after that, he will ask you to undergo a blood test. Let's say if in the blood test you are detected with malaria, will the doctor prescribe you or give you the same medicines which are existing on his shelf, or he will prescribe you something else from the medical? He will ask you to take some specific medicine, right? Can I say in this case, when I know that a person is suffering from malaria, I exactly know which pathogen is harming that person's body? So can I say one disease, one medicine? You answered it correctly. Such type of antibiotics which are made for only specific type of diseases. Let's say in front of your screen, you are able to see malaria is red color. So that's only one specific disease. And when you know that which exact pathogen is harming your body, you will give the medicine which will only affect that pathogen. Such kind of antibiotics are called as narrow spectrum antibiotics. Okay, so we have understood there are two types of antibiotics. They can be either broad spectrum antibiotics or narrow spectrum antibiotics. So you have understood the concepts. Now let's have look at both of them a little bit more. When we will use broad spectrum antibiotics, or what will be the exact definition of them? Now what I want you to write is, I want you all to give the heading as types of antibiotics and write Roman number 1 and 2. Make the first one as broad spectrum antibiotics, leave 2 to 3 lines, and then write narrow spectrum antibiotics. I want you all to write the heading as types of antibiotics and write 2 serial number. Let the first one be broad spectrum antibiotic and let the second one be narrow spectrum antibiotic. Done? Okay. Now let's understand what are broad spectrum antibiotics. Now pen down, please listen to it. Antibiotics that are useful against wide variety of bacteria, that means more than one bacteria at one time, are called as broad spectrum antibiotics. Now let's understand examples. Examples are ampicillin. Now these are antibiotics. These are not bacteria. These are antibiotics. So examples are ampicillin, amoxicillin, and tetracycline. here is the answer for your next question. That do we have to remember this? Yes, you have to. This question can be asked while you will be studying odd man out, because you will have three examples from broad spectrum antibiotics and three examples from narrow spectrum antibiotics. So these can be asked into objective based questions and even for match the following. Now, when do we use them? When the pathogen is the disease causing germ. When the pathogen cannot be identified, even though the symptoms of the disease are visible, at that time we use broad spectrum antibiotics. Okay, now quickly write down the second point though, which is example of broad spectrum antibiotics under the heading which you have written. Okay, let's move on to narrow spectrum antibiotics. Now, what are narrow spectrum antibiotics? These are antibiotics that are useful only for specific pathogen. That means for a known pathogen. Such type of antibiotics are called as narrow spectrum antibiotics. Now, what are the examples? Here we go with the second point. Penicillin. Yes, penicillin, gentamicin, and erythromycin. These three are examples of narrow spectrum antibiotics. Now, when do we use these antibiotics? Whenever a pathogenic microorganism is definitely known to us. Only in such case, we will be diagnosing or we will be giving the patient narrow spectrum antibiotics. Now, it's not we, it will be doctor who will be prescribing these medicines. I hope you're writing the second point. Okay, now let's understand penicillin. The commonly asked question on the chat box, that is penicillin also an antibiotic? The answer is yes. Now, why is the name penicillin? Now, let me tell you, when you heard the story about Dr. Alexander Fleming, which fungus was it which killed staphylococci? Yes, the name of the fungus was Penicillium. So, the first antibiotic which was discovered or which was made from this Penicillium fungus. Therefore, the name of this first antibiotic, which is made from Penicillium fungus, is called as penicillin. And this antibiotic is used in controlling infections caused by bacteria like staphylococci, we already know, Clostridia, and Streptococcus or Streptococci. All these three are harmful bacteria for us. And penicillin is used in treatment of these bacteria. Please understand, penicillin comes under narrow spectrum antibiotics. So many a time if you have infection for your ears, maybe on your tongue, throat infection, doctor will prescribe you with antibiotic which will contain penicillin in it. Now there's a question why penicillium is converted to penicillin. Now penicillium is the name of fungus. Can you directly give a patient to eat fungus? No, right? You need to treat it. You need to clarify. You need to take only those particles or those parts from that fungus which will be used in killing the bacteria. You don't want to give the entire fungus. Otherwise, the medicines wouldn't have been made. Only the fungus would have been cultivated and it would be given to the patients. Please remember, penicillium is the name of fungus and penicillin is the name of medicine. Okay? All right. So in front of the screen, what you're able to see is the diagram of penicillium fungus. Then the three types of bacteria, Staphylococci, Clostridia, and Streptococci. So this one fungus named as penicillium has the power to kill these three bacteria. Now there's one doubt constantly asked, what are generic medicines? Now let's say you own a pharmaceutical company. You will have to find medicines, let's say on joint pains. What you do, you keep on experimenting and you make a medicine. Now, will you tell the formula to anybody that I made this medicine by using this formula, by using this much amount of this specific drug and everything? No, you won't disclose. Why? Because you have put a lot of money into the research of the medicine. Therefore, it is obvious that you will also charge whoever is buying your medicines, you will also charge the amount for the research. Correct? So if I have research and I have got a medicine on joint pains and I'm selling it at maybe 100 rupee for 5 tablets, that means one tablet goes to 20 rupees. Why? Because I have invested a lot into research. Generic medicines are the companies which will buy the formula directly and they will produce the medicines. Therefore, these companies will not invest a lot of money into research. So since the formula is available, they will only have to produce it. Therefore, when you get generic medicines, you use the same formula. Only you will get them at a cheaper rate. Maybe here, if you are getting 20 rupees a tablet, in case of generic medicines, you will get them maybe at 4 to 5 rupees a tablet. Understanding why is the difference? Okay, now moving on to the next slide, there are a few very, very important points. Number one, antibiotic should be taken only when prescribed by the doctor. खुद से खुद को prescription नहीं करना है. Don't purchase any antibiotic from medicine stores without prescription from doctor. खुद के doctor मत बनो. Don't consume antibiotics on your own to treat common diseases like throat infection, common cold, and influenza. Don't experiment on to medicines you do not have that degree. Let the doctor do his work. Even if when you feel, so let's say doctor has asked you, okay, if you're not feeling well, this is the course is of 3 days, you should be completing it. After 2 days, let's say if you're feeling relaxed, you will be like, I don't want to take medicines tomorrow. क्यों? क्योंकि मुझे आज ही अच्छा लग रहा है. Please do not do so. Always complete the course. That's your fourth point. Even if you feel well before completing the prescribed course of the antibiotic, you must continue and complete it. Fifth, and the most important point, do not suggest to others the antibiotics which were useful for you, because every patient will have a different medical history. मुझे दवाई खा के अच्छा लगा, तुम भी ये यूज करो, ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं करना है. Are you getting me? Okay, so we are done with today's part. We have learned about antibiotics and we learned about yeast, ethanol, and questions after ethanol. So we are done with today's lecture. Thank you, students. Bye-bye. Okay, there's one more doubt. What is influenza? It is nothing but flu. We call it as flu. Side effects of broad spectrum will depend upon what are you consuming, how are you consuming it in the required way, have you consumed something which should not be taken while you are taking the medicines. So side effects would be differing from person to person. There was one more, what could I say, doubt in the chat box. Yes, fern is an example of pteridophyta. It's in pteridophytes. How much long will it take for a wine to expire? There's no expiry date as such. You need to keep pumping up oxygen inside it so that yeast is continuously eating up the sugar and converting it into CO2 and ethanol. Okay, thank you. Bye bye. We can say goodbye. We will have one more lecture. Bye.